So let's get right back to the news. And joining me now is Eric O'Neill. He's a counterterrorism operative. I was going to call you a spy. What would you call yourself, Eric?
A former counterterrorism, counterintelligence operative for the FBI.
So how closely were you watching and listening to that 11 a.m. on Saturday press conference where we had Raising Cain, get up there and tell us exactly play by play how that operation went? What impressed you most?
I was fascinated. It was like reading a great Tom Clancy novel. The operation was an overwhelming success, one of the most sophisticated and well orchestrated military operations I've ever seen. And what is amazing about it is essentially what over 150 aircraft, multiple ships launching from different bases, bombing runs, cyber attacks, all of that was to create a safe corridor for helicopters to deliver escorted FBI agents to serve an arrest warrant and arrest Nicolás Maduro, who was the illegitimate president of Venezuela, extract him and bring him back to the U.S., where right there where you are in New York.
That's right.
Spent the first day in trial today.
Right. And, he's another night in the MDC there in Brooklyn, of course. And he pled not guilty yesterday, and he tried to plead his case, but the judge shut that down pretty quickly and said, you'll get your chance. This is not the place. But very interesting case. Now, the real question most people have, we saw a lot of mixed reaction. There were Venezuelans cheering in the streets of Miami and some in Venezuela as well. And then there are others more cautious, and there are both critics of the president, the operation itself, not necessarily removing him from power, but how it was done. We can't just go in and remove people out of their heads of state around the world that we don't agree with. I want to push it forward, though. What happens next? How do you see the leadership of Venezuela going?
Certainly. Well, one of the reasons that it is very quiet in Venezuela right now is because that formal, brutal, repressive, and very abusive socialist regime of Maduro is potentially continued under Delcy Rodriguez, who was his vice president and, by all reports, just as bad as he was. She is the de facto leader of Venezuela. She was sworn in the morning after Maduro was extracted by the United States. And right now, the question about what comes next is how well does she work with the United States, or do we need to take further action there? So the big three questions now for us and them are, will Venezuela, under this current leadership, quickly act to free political prisoners? That's very important. We still have Americans that are incarcerated there in Venezuela, and some of them wrongfully so. Will they put into place conditions for a functioning democracy? That is very important. She's only supposed to serve as an interim president for 30 days. So we need to see some movement toward a new election. And of course, that's the third thing, a final election that is free, open, and has some scrutiny by outside watchdogs to make sure that it is fair.
And there's a lot of talk about Machado and her Nobel Prize, and she said on Hannity last night she plans to go back to Venezuela, but she doesn't appear to have the support of the administration to take over. And we also heard President Trump double down that he's the bottom line. He'll be running things, or deciding who runs things, I should say. What do you expect to happen?
I think what's happening right now is when Trump says, or when the administration says they're running things, I look at what Marco Rubio said to clarify, in that essentially what it is it's a carrot and a stick. As long as the line is towed by the current administration in Venezuela, then they get a carrot. But if they step out of bounds, then they're still surrounded by a naval blockade, and military could move right in. As far as Machado, I think she would be a perfect president, future president of Venezuela, and so do the people in Venezuela. They elected her almost at a 2-to-1 margin over Nicolás Maduro. One of the issues, of course, is much of her support fled the country. There are reportedly 8 million Venezuelans who have moved into a large diaspora outside of Venezuela. Presumably, many of them would have to return home in order to have that election that would elect someone like Machado. And I think the Trump administration, and from some CIA analysis, is concerned that were they to just bring her back to the country and say, hey, you're the president now, the people might not go with that, go for that because they're proud. And also, the military wouldn't. And if the military doesn't go with any future president, it can cause serious insurgency problems and unrest. And we do not want this to become another Iraq.
Certainly not. And of course, we haven't said anything. We haven't said the O word, oil. And that, of course, what President Trump says that he accused Venezuela of stealing, and he wants U.S. oil companies to go in there and rebuild Venezuela. But are we talking years, maybe a decade before they could rebuild? And don't they want the security of a democratic regime in power before they send their resources in to try to rebuild and get more oil out of Venezuela? And if they're only 1% of the oil production, what's the point? Or is it just to kick Iran and China out? I know it's a lot of questions.
It's a lot of questions, but oil, oil is a big part of it. Now, here's why oil is a big part of it, because we don't want China or Russia, and mostly China here, to be able to direct where that oil goes. That is a big resource, and we certainly don't want that oil going to Cuba. Now, Cuba's powering their country with Venezuelan oil. By exerting influence in Venezuela now, democratizing the country, and removing their ties to Cuba, Russia, and China, we strengthen the Western Hemisphere, and we cause a degradation of Cuba. So this could actually be all about Cuba, and Venezuela is a way to get there. The other side of it is, yes, one of the problems for Venezuela, why they're not pumping a lot of oil, is they dismantled their infrastructure. When you turn everything over to the state and you deprivatize, that causes infrastructure collapse, and that's what's happened in Venezuela. I think Chevron is still there. They hedged their bet, and they've got a small presence there where they can pump some oil. They could always ramp up, but you are completely correct. Any company that wants to expand operations there has to make sure that after the Trump presidency, not knowing who would be elected, this doesn't revert right back.
Awesome. Last, before I let you go, I got to ask you about Greenland. That's all the talk today. Everybody wanting to know, is that next? Trump is threatening, his team threatening to take over Greenland. They want some rare minerals there, among other things, and the Danes aren't too happy about that.
Yeah, I know that Trump likes to keep all his options open, and he likes to make everything like a little bit like a drama show, and that's part of his mystery, and that's how he keeps people guessing. But I sincerely doubt that we're going to take military action against Greenland. They're a NATO ally. There are plenty of different other diplomatic ways to maintain a presence there. We already have a military base, and so I would suspect that in the Greenland case, it's more of a diplomatic reach out to determine the fate of Greenland rather than a military strike.
Eric O'Neill, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Author, counterterrorism expert, and I don't know, secret spy. Who knows? Thank you for joining us.
Author of Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. And
I love it.
It's my pleasure to be on the show.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.